folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have a special director study today of Mr. Sean Baker. So we're going back to 2012 for his first feature film of Starlet. We're then going to 2015's Tangerine. Then have the Florida Project, Red Rocket, and finally, now in theaters, newly released Anora. So it is a Sean Baker show, folks. Let's see what Mr. Vincent Daly has to say about it. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Daly, how we doing over there, buddy?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going okay. On my side of the table, how was your Baker week?
Baker week, Shawnee Sweets. I don't know. I was trying to come up with a name, bro.
I was loving that Eddie Slider the other day.
Yeah, I know. Nothing's gonna beat Eddie Slider. Yeah, I mean, it was a hell of a week. I'll tell you that. These are some heartbreaking movies, but very, very, very odd movies all around.
Yeah.
I was happy to do this week. As folks, if you listen to some of our October episodes, this was originally going to be a 5-slot in October, but Anora's release schedule was so weird. Yeah, almost like it felt like only 2 states at a time, too. It was very odd. So
slow release, trying to build up buzz for sure, and keep it in the news because it's just getting Oscar buzz.
Yeah, absolutely. But Sean Baker, I mean, he wears a lot of hats for these movies. I'm sure.
How so?
Writer, director, editor, nearly on all of them.
Yes, yeah.
Dips into casting director, most notably for Anora. But yeah, just like, what we always talk about, we like director-writers, first of all.
Yeah.
We usually have a kind of a sixth sense if there's too many things being juggled by a director, if it's actually hurting the production. For the most part, Baker's such a consistent director. All of these films are very similar in scope and goals and themes that I wanted to just kind of, not in a head-to-head, but where do all of these films rank for me personally?
Yeah, because you put it very succinctly in a text to me earlier in the week. You said, dude made the same 5 movies, something like that.
Yeah, for real, he really did. He made 5 movies of the same idea in a row, basically.
And I feel like because he's not a household name, I kind of want to just take a second of why is it important for us to dedicate a director study to this guy?
Well, I think mostly it's because he is a strong new voice, and even though I'm not going to be at the level of praise that a lot of his films are incredibly praised.
They
online.
Are beloved by the film community.
Absolutely. So I think he is an interesting voice because we'll talk about it plenty over the next 5 films. There are trademarks to his style that are so distinct that I feel like the curiosity for me in spotting trademarks and spotting the DNA of directors,
as we always talk about.
Yeah, I mean that is so distinct here for Sean Baker.
Yeah, I like that we're covering him just because of the fact of because he's not a household name, but he is within the industry. He has very much become a household name since Tangerine.
Yep.
And then the Florida Project almost was stamped and sealed.
Yes.
That Sean Baker is a guy to watch out for. And he's never has massive box office success because they're more indie set films, and it's just the scope and the type of dramas he does that they're not blockbuster. They're not supposed to be blockbuster movies. But it's his storytelling. It's the stories that he wants to tell, which I think is another reason why, is it up its own ass a little bit when it comes to the industry fawning all over him.
Oh, sure.
But there is something going on with him, and I like that we can kind of sit down here and say, is it worth the watch for like the normal everyday person.
Oh, right.
Again,
Exactly.
He is a name and yet isn't to the masses. So I like that we're really going through his stuff here from start to finish.
Absolutely. And really, I've only seen Florida Project. So as far as like curiosity for my own kind of judgment of his directing, that's exactly where I was like, all right, this is a perfect 5 slot.
And did you know about him? Did you know about Tangerine when it came out?
I definitely heard the buzz, just
Okay.
never got around to watching it.
And so Florida Project, did you watch that when it came out in 17? Or
Yes.
even okay.
Yeah.
So I watched, as you know, we saw Anora together, and then you also know I watched the Florida Project because that's the one where Tangerine was getting a lot of buzz. It's more so not the gimmick of it, but people were very impressed with the quality of film, and he filmed it on 3 iPhones.
Yes,
on the
yes.
on the iPhone 5S's.
Yep.
And an extremely cheap budget. His second film had a cheaper budget than the first one, Starlet, which is impressive. Yeah, it was good to see what the buzz was about finally.
Yeah,
because everybody has interest. I always had interest in seeing the Florida Project because that finally made it in the Oscars a bit. So it's good that we're kind of shedding a light on him.
And it's also on that note of I don't know why this director versus any other director. It's in the projects that he's taking on that he wants to create. The writer directors, he's not taking any projects in this, over 10-year span that are not something that he's penning himself,
Right.
in some regards. So
Like super involved.
yeah.
Which
So-
respect there completely.
Exactly. So I think that's always deserving a look, and why I want to do these type of director 5 spots. I always love to do these. This is a very enjoyable week, despite a lot of subject matter of these films being heavy or heartbreaking or frustrating in a lot of ways. So, but I have a few trademarks for any folks at home to kind of look out for over the course of these reviews, folks. If you want to go ahead and watch along, if the announcement of this special, you've already done your homework and watched some of these films. This is kind of a rundown of, again, the DNA of the director here. And I'm boiling it down to kind of 3 things, but in themselves, kind of they're deep concepts that you're going to see in nearly all of these films. The first being realistic casting. I think whether it be kind of scary, realistic extras in the background or just like the hyper-authentic atmosphere of his films, they're always filled with very unconventional choices that bleed into real life. The second being kind of what I was calling throughout the week a heartbreaking charm, almost to the point of criticism. Like I said over text, it was a little harsher over text. All 5 of these movies are very similar at giving us a glimpse at something we know is messed up, but presenting it earnestly, presenting it authentically, and not really punching down on these characters.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. There's no matter how dubious or degenerate some of these characters are, they're all kind of under equal spotlight in that way. Lastly, I would say maybe I could come up with a better title for this, but I was coming up with the sleeper hit. While his stories are simple and function in similar ways, they always pay off in a dramatic hit, whether it being worth it in some way, either from a last-second reveal or themes really coming together in that last second to rip your heart out. All of his films operate in that way, and I think the good news is that all these films are worth watching in some way for that reason.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. I think we got a good boilerplate on who Sean Baker is. Let's get into it. Yeah,
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to jump back to 2012. I think he's done some shorts, and of course, there's always he's a New York City guy, and he came out of NYU or he came out of Film Institute.
Okay,
so he studied. He went to school for it. He's one of these guys. And then his first feature film, is 2012 with the movie Starlet. It came out in South by Southwest. I don't think it had a theater release because it doesn't have an MPAA rating.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's an hour and 43 minutes. It's a proper length film. And I'm excited to hear the quality of this and overall just get into it, Vin, and tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kick off this week with one of the earlier features from Sean Baker, but not the one to garner the attention he received as such a new director on the scene. That would be our next film, Tangerine, but I felt it was still important to cover this as it begins the collaboration with his partner in crime writer, Chris Burgoch. I think it's Burgoch?
Yeah, I think we're going to go with that.
He works with Baker lockstep for all these films except our new release where Baker himself is the solo writer, in addition, once again, to the many hats he wears in the production. I also wanted to start with this because, like I said, one of Sean Baker's trademarks is centering his films on these kind of downtrodden or even dubious characters, but doing so in an earnest way. It's the reveal of the true nature of our characters that changes from film to film, and for Starlet, it's probably the most subtle for a good hour into the story. I would say it's a bit tricky because this is the only film where it felt like these elements might be a slight spoiler. Watching this in 2012, not knowing the MO of...
I see what you're saying.
This might be a spoiler in itself, this reveal.
Sure.
But it would really be hard to discuss the movie without it. Something just to keep in mind. Starlet is a heartwarming drama of an unconventional friendship between a naive girl and a retired woman that is sparked initially by guilt, but grows into something much more. We follow Jane, a girl breaking into the porn industry and wasting away her days when she finds a hidden stash of money from a yard sale purchase. The grumpy old lady running the yard sale, Sadie, has no idea about the stash, no less it had $10,000 cash hidden inside. Out of guilt, boredom, or genuine curiosity, Jane starts helping Sadie with her day-to-day life and blossoms into a friendship neither of their past lives can hurt. I'll talk a lot about the settings because they're really characters in themselves when it comes to all of these films. The setting here is a languishing daytime LA filled with the kind of geriatric routine of Sadie. I'm talking bingo halls and early bird specials, basically, and obviously contrasted with what we discover Jane's real life to be. These innocent moments are side by side with glimpses into the chaotic life of the porn industry and the many types of personalities that brings. Most of the tension of the film comes from the risk of these two sides mixing together to threaten this new friendship. All of this is done with Baker's trademark realistic casting, though, including a handful of real porn stars, but what grabbed my attention was just the countless old people that were sprinkled into the background of scenes. I mean, there are wow, it's like, they go into this bingo hall, and it's like, they got permission to film in this bingo hall. This is operating hours. And, I can't really speak for the 2 to 3 smaller films he did before this, still technically feature releases, but he has one he does in the year 2000, I think one in 2004, one 2008. But it was interesting to see that same authentic approach used on retirement age communities where for every other film that we're approaching is going to be used for, more downtrodden communities and usually for comedic effect. There was just something very cute and authentic about this friendship between this young girl and, this bitter woman. Very, very innocent, believe it or not. Personally, I just wish the drama kind of swirled a bit more here. What we do get is a little bit predictable, again, of the threat of are they going to find out,
right.
one or the other. A lot of time is dedicated to the friendship itself, which isn't a bad thing, but it shortens the runway for how dramatic beats are used in the story. By the end, I just felt it was a little cliche of how Jane's obviously sketchy job would threaten things, and I think it would have been a lot stronger if that was peppered in more throughout the story, or there were more ties to that kind of tension. For me, folks, this wasn't bad, but nothing really to rave about either, sadly. I felt like this was in the tradition of a Wim Wenders film, especially what I experienced earlier this year watching Paris, Texas. There is... I don't know, you're just kind of watching scenery. You're not watching paint dry necessarily.
Yeah, but you are waiting around.
Yeah. I think that waiting around comes with a very natural friendship that comes about between these two characters. And I certainly can appreciate what Baker does with his shots, for sure what he does in creating a realistic atmosphere. But this really felt like a proto version of what we'll get with Baker's own film, Red Rocket, and what that film will excel at down the road in his career with a singular character to examine rather than splitting it with the relationship. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Starlet 2012 a 53.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's 53. But basically, if you watch this, like, you see the building blocks here of who this guy is and the direction he likes to go.
In ways, I kind of regretted watching it because this honestly would have been perfect for a director's first slot, if we were covering directors of the 2010s.
We got to start thinking about that
Yeah,
now.
I know. Yeah, for real. But because it really did have all those hallmarks, but just was a proto version of it.
Right,
So.
everything is scaled back. So
Yeah,
the
exactly.
drama is scaled back. Kind of the, one thing about his scenes, because there was a lot of slowness to his movies. What's at least going on with the characters and the dialogue that's keeping you engaged? But it sounds like everything's just scaled back a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So-
I would say even like the heartbreak, the twist of the knife, as I'll say in some of these, was
even
even
softer.
less. Yeah. It wasn't at that point where it's just like, oh wow, these are so like get ready for the ending.
Right,
like
of
a lot of
course.
these work. So.
Okay. All right. So with that, that was 2012. Now in 2015, this is a movie called Tangerine, and it really put him on the map. I believe this came out in Cannes then, or Cannes, and it was getting buzz there. And this is the surprising part, that like it was a budget of $100,000. The first film he did was like $250,000.
Wow.
And then how was the quality of that image-wise?
Fine.
Like it felt like a movie?
Yeah, but it felt definitely like an earlier film.
Okay, not like a student film, though.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's just funny that this film comes out, and, it's like I said before, it was, I think he bought a kit of Steadicams, like not big Steadicams, cheap Steadicams.
Wow.
For his iPhone 5Ss.
Yeah.
And he had 3 of them, and this is how we made the film, $100,000 and 3 iPhones. It's his shortest film, which I think makes sense, at like an hour and 28 minutes.
Sure.
And he is, I said he was a New York guy because that's where he came out of school. He loves LA.
Yeah, he really does.
So I know we're set in LA again.
Yep.
But Tangerine to put him on the map, so get into it. Does it deserve the hype it still gets?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm going to be kind of at odds with the
That's
level
fine.
of praise that a lot of these films get. But, folks, this is definitely where Sean Baker landed on most film buffs' radars, getting a huge amount of praise for multiple reasons. The use of those iPhones, 3 iPhone 5Ss, not exactly a great camera on that to begin with. It was used both as a marketing angle and a technical challenge for the film. Setting the story from the perspective of trans prostitution is bold even by today's standards, almost 10 years later. And most of all, is able to be a surprisingly entertaining movie, despite always flirting the line with, heavier beats of drama like all these films do. The reality of what the characters live in. I would describe Tangerine as mostly a dark comedy, but with its story taking place only over a few hours, has a scrambling rhythm that adds more action than you would actually expect to this.
Oh, because it's moving.
Yeah, it's almost kind of an adventure film through Hollywood. Odd to say that, but it really is. It's only over a night. We follow Cindy, a transsexual prostitute, recently back from jail, and on the hunt for her former pimp who was cheating on her while she was in the can. On a straight-up warpath, she is out to find who is screwing her man, and it only gets more chaotic than ever as clientele mix into a shit show of rumors and drama, and again, an absolute warpath that she's on. Oh yeah, and did I forget to mention, all of this is happening on Christmas Eve, making this one of the most messed up secret Christmas movies imaginable.
I did not know that about this film.
Yeah.
A secret Christmas movie, okay.
And you look at screen grabs and, like, obviously LA Christmas is, like, barely Christmas at all.
Of course, yeah,
yeah. But it really is. I mean, unusually happy with the secret Christmas notes in this. You have people flipping each other off and saying Merry Christmas.
Right,
It's it's really something else. I would say, much like our new release Anora, the characters are strike an effortlessly funny, effortless comedy in kind of the ratchet, what will come out of their mouth next kind of way. Like the strippers in Anora, how they clap back at each other, kind of the bitchiness of that. How that's just kind of, something to chuckle at. It's not like them cracking jokes necessarily.
Right. I like how he does it. I think he does a very good job at it.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is just because with the characters that he has to have, and like the actors, there's naturally a comedic, if you had had a day in the life with these people in reality,
right.
there'd be some funny shit going on.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
And I think it adds to the realism. Like these people are kind of they would be naturally funny in the way that they are, I don't know, overly sassy or kind of, again, kind of clapping back and, the insult banter that would happen.
It makes it seem like genuine comedy. I think for like 4 of these 5 films, I have drama comedy or something in there.
Oh, yeah.
It is something, but it's not written like a comedy.
Exactly.
And I like there is, I don't know, I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, it's not cracking jokes per se, which I definitely like that more than if these were kind of caricatures of these.
And it makes it easier to watch the film, I think, just because you're dealing with heavier topics, typically, and with him, and, it could just kind of be an emotional roller coaster. Yeah. So the levity, I think...
It's appreciated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All of these hookers in drag kind of strike a RuPaul type of comedy where they're just excessively sassy. It'll just caught you off guard and really make you laugh. The street talk here was easily the best part of this as well, because not only was it comedic without trying too hard, but it was also that trademark realism that makes Baker's movies worth checking out in the first place. I'll be honest, the one piece that hasn't really worked for me across all 5 of these films is I really don't love how music is used in his films. I would say the one exception is an NSYNC song used in Red Rocket for a very specific reason. It's always just used right on the cut of a scene transition, and here it's just further highlighted by the technical limits of filming on these phones, basically. I think there could be something stylistic in how abrupt it is sometimes. It's almost always very abruptly cut. But time after time, I just felt the soundtrack of these movies and how they're used kind of held the experience back a little bit for me.
And would you say that it's sparingly used? Would you say that?
Yeah.
I think for 3
He's
of these...
usually choosing like 1 or 2 songs and more so repeats them throughout the film.
Okay, because there's not a music credit or composed by or music by credit.
Wow.
I think for the majority of these films.
Wow.
Which makes me almost think that that's him.
Yeah. Another hat.
But also that it's so sparsely used, or not a lot is used, that it's not even apparently worth mentioning it in the credits.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me, because I put them on the site after I watched them, and I had to think back. I was like, when was there music? Were these way more quiet than I thought? And I'm like, no, I know there was transitional stuff.
Yeah.
But it didn't stick with me in any way.
Yeah. And sometimes those choices themselves, like Anora, I don't bring it up in what I have for my review, but
that had the most, I think.
Yeah, but also kind of like, I don't know, kind of feels royalty free music. I don't know if we're just like we're hyper aware of this just by looking for stuff like that.
It's what we do now.
Yeah.
But I will say I was aware of it in Anora, saying not I don't know, not a cheapness, but
a cookie cutterness.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah. But here, I just think, for Tangerine specifically, I think the combination of some of the cuts with the iPhone technicality of it was something I needed to know for all of them, and probably at its worst in Tangerine. Hollywood is the only repeat location used among the films this week, but I would say it's totally worth it, because Tangerine uses Tinseltown to fuel the chaos of hunting down a pimp. This captures a modern seedy LA in a way that no one really seems to have the balls to do lately, and it's where the use of iPhones go beyond just a gimmick, where I was really able to appreciate the use of this. The locales are filled with bail bonds on nearly every corner, working girls walking the street, lines wrapping around clubs. All of this is captured in a way that could have the World Star logo in the corner of the footage. This is like very... Not only is the iPhone an interesting way to film this type of story, but it's probably the appropriate way to film this type of story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a match. If you've ever gone out drinking and found random videos you took on your phone from the night before, this movie captures that feeling of just like, when did I take this video? And what happened, and what they say to me? So that's really all over this. But folks, it's chaotic. It's nerve-wracking, but it's still surprisingly an enjoyable movie. I thought this was going to be much more dramatic. I thought there was just going to be a lot more melodramatic, just in the sense of it is a kind of a dicey topic to center your characters in trans prostitution. I was ready to put this next to other type of anxious films like an Uncut Gems or other films from the Safdie brothers, which personally I've never really digged, but it's got its own thing going on. And, again, surprisingly funny, and it just surprisingly enjoyable. It hides the sadder tones in the reality of these characters, and because I'll touch on this with Red Rocket, because it's more of like an outwardly funny movie. And more of an outwardly enjoyable experience, it kind of makes that turn of the knife, that heartbreak at the end, hit all the harder, because even if you were necessarily expecting it, or you pick up on these dramatic beats throughout the film, there's something to the fact that it was primarily a light, it had brevity to it, and then it really hits you in the gut with it. I think there's something still successful about that, despite what I always assumed was just kind of a gimmick film that caught the eye of the masses and caught the eye of film buffs. There was still something to this, even 10 years later. We're going to go ahead and give Tangerine 2015 a 66.
Okay, 66, a pretty good score. I'm excited to see where these do end up, because I know in the critic world he kind of goes up and up and up and up. Maybe a little dip with Red Rocket.
Sure.
But it always seems like his career is on a trajectory upward.
Yeah.
As far as success and critic praise, things like that.
Yeah.
But okay, Tangent with a 66. I guess my only question is, 9 years later, how does it hold up as far as a good-looking film? How does the imagery and the fluidity of shooting on iPhones hold up?
That's where I would say it's a good match for iPhones, because does it look like it escapes being shot on iPhones? No, but
I don't want to watch a student film, though.
It's not a student film.
Okay.
This Starlet felt like not a student film, but it felt lower
Lesser.
level. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Here, there's something to it that, again, there is a match of form and function. There is something to seeing, a perfect example is when Cindy is going around and talking to the other prostitutes and saying, like, where's my man, and trying to track down her pimp. There is something there that's like, it might be a clip away from having a World Star logo in the corner,
right.
But there is something significant about pairing this with iPhone footage. Like, it could just be one of her girls documenting this or trying to, like, embarrass her man once she finds them or something like that.
Yeah.
Like dirt on the cheater or something like that. There's something to the match there.
Good, okay.
And again, like, surprisingly funny. It really got me.
I think that's a knack of his.
Yeah.
It's appreciated.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's jump to 20. That, by the way, that came out in Sundance, and Mark Duplass, or the Duplass brothers, helped produce it or got behind the film for them to make it. It did really well in Sundance, and then Magnolia picked it up for distribution. And this is his theming, where he always gets money from outside sources, but they always come from bigger and bigger pockets, it looks like, and then somebody else picks them up for distribution.
Yeah.
So even when he does A24 distributes one of these. I can't remember.
Florida Project.
Yep. Right. They didn't do any of the funding actually for it, but he's I don't know. It's a cool baby step. That he takes.
Yeah, I believe he speaks about this approach to the studio system, that he's still using the studios, or he's still collaborating, I should say, with the studios, but he's doing what he wants to do. He speaks about this on the current PR circuit for Anora. And I'll mention it in the Anora review that, I don't know, there's something to it. I mean, I think my interest for covering this 5-spot for him comes from just hearing him talk about this and how passionate he is with it, and how intelligent he is in going about a different way to make movies. You know? Something interesting there.
Okay, all right. So like I said, 2017, this is The Florida Project, and this after Tangerine. There's a spotlight on him within the industry, and this is when it's just like, okay, this is good enough now. Let's talk. It's time to talk Oscars with this guy, which is what this did.
Yep.
So, like I said, I watched it as well. It's an hour and 51 minutes. It's rated R, which basically all of his films are. What story is being told here, Vin? And we'll take it back. We'll take it back and forth. The Florida Project.
Boy, I'm so glad you watched this because we both have a recent experience in Disney World that added a lot to my appreciation of this film.
It did for me a little bit. It was on my mind a bit.
Well, like I said, this is the first and only film of Sean Baker's that I've seen, and while I anticipated being able to appreciate it a lot more, I was surprised by what elements worked best for me in this, in his movies as a whole this week. And really it comes down to, those trademarks that I opened up the episode with. Previously, this was rated on the site as a 65, pretty harsh, and in the vacuum of pre-podcast scores, probably was communicating how much I hate kid acting, how much I passionately hate the mother in this, and how much I hate pretty much every character besides Willem Dafoe in this.
Okay, I'm a little surprised. That's after a rewatch. You feel this way?
No.
Okay.
I would say that's the context of where this was at a 65. And again, in the vacuum pre-podcast, this was, the scores were almost a gauge for myself to return to. It was like, did I like that movie? Or
Sure.
Did I actually like that movie?
I will always rep with how close you are with your scores.
Yeah.
Literally at this point, 10 years ago.
Yeah, true.
That you were still pretty damn consistent.
I think watching this, though, my dislike for the kids stayed about the same, but I would be lying if I said that this wasn't Baker's most fine-tuned project. Every element of his directing is in play here, and probably at its best considering how it ties its experience of a coming-of-age theme that a wider audience can relate with. I'm not saying that, to recommend a film, it has to work for everyone, but I feel like there is something to say that the more niche or, unconventional type of stories that we get with the characters he chooses to tell them around, sometimes I would imagine that probably alienates certain audiences. Here, you have all of that grit, but it's still through a child's eyes, and I feel like there is something relatable to that, and relatable to spotting, hey, what's wrong with this picture, which Florida Project is so hyper-focused on. The Florida Project is a coming-of-age drama that puts many harsh adult realities in a indirect spotlight as we discover the world through the eyes of children in the outskirts of Disney World. I would describe this setting here as, the term I came up with is a pastel ghetto. Everything is lifted up from the huge tourism economy of the area, but still showing how that can breed struggle. We see this world of struggle through the eyes of Mooney. I think it's pronounced Mooney. She says Mooney in the...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Mooney, a 6-year-old girl living with her degenerate mother, Haley, as their quality of life quickly spirals out of control. While any sane adult can see the near countless issues with the mother's parental style, the film's experience is still through the eyes of a child. The freedom and the excitement of these summer days blur whatever hardship might be affecting them, and all in the shadow of any child's ultimate dream, going to Disney World. I'll joke and say Baker has made a career making the same movie again and again. But as for his trademark realism, it might be at its peak here. This is where I gained a lot of appreciation from the Disney World trip. It's the locales of that stretch of Florida.
Like you're shocked with how not nice Florida is right outside the parks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost like the immediate drop-off.
Because this is right out. This is like just motel.
Yep.
You have strip malls that don't look the best.
Right.
The whole movie takes place basically at just a cheap hotel or a cheap motel.
Yep. It's also it's the one scene where she gets the phony or not the phony, but she gets the premium passes. What are they called? The fast passes.
Yeah.
She's selling them outside of a premium pass dealer that's basically leeching itself off of the park. And I was just like, I think I remember seeing a couple of those. It was just something there that there was something palpable to the atmosphere of this that is definitely present in his other movies. I feel like it was a setting that captured it just a touch better in this one. Baker's type of socioeconomic settings all hit on a similar kind of downtrodden visuals, but it's pacing, or it's placing these visuals side by side with goddamn Disney World that just creates such a contrast. And that contrast you can feel all over the film.
Yeah.
You feel that in the characters. You feel that in the scope of the story of examining this mother that is trying to make a good life but is clearly misguided in her parenting. Bleeding edge colors of all the buildings, the Mickey Mouse street names, the sunny days, all of this spotlights the reality of what surrounds the kids. And again, that harsh adult reality that surrounds the kids. And, rewatching this, I really appreciated how just fine-tuned all of this was to the goals and themes of the film, despite, my enjoyment of the film, my actual, man, I would love to put on Florida Project. It's still probably about the same when I originally watched it, but I think I really gained a lot of appreciation. Just like every ounce of this film is directed towards those goals of what it's after.
And I think right going off of that, he does hit so many of those goals, and and I really liked the movie. It was a very well done movie with every point that he wanted to hit, and I think everything from the characters were written really well, the actors acted really well once again. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but the kid acting, because this entire movie is kid acting, I thought was very impressive.
Yeah.
How much rested on their shoulders.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the movie ends, and I wasn't overly excited about the film. I have nothing real bad to say about it. But this is hard for me to need to flip on again, or I don't know what mood I'm going to be in, where it's just like, man, I'm in a Florida Project mood.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Maybe if you need an outlet for anger, at the mother, basically.
Right. And I think it's just a very well told story, and it's a drama story. It's a kind of societal castaway story, which is his bread and butter. It's him. It's what Sean Baker does,
100%.
And part of that DNA, and how he kind of makes 5 movies in a row, kind of the same, which is what we're talking about here. His societal castaway films, but. It's just really well done, but it's hard to get excited about a film like that.
Yeah.
There's great comedic moments to it, just like we talked about with his other films. He has a really good job of it not being just a bummer to watch, because it's not. There's enough there to keep you going and keep you interested. But when it ends, it's just appreciation, but not overly fawning or loving. And that's
sure. And I think that's what I was kind of experiencing as well. The enjoyment of a watching experience versus the quality of the art.
Right. Because I have nothing bad. It's hard to say something bad about the film.
Exactly. Because I feel like it is almost not bulletproof, but it's all fine-tuned. It's all lasered in on what the goals of the film are and the goals of the themes. My issue is the kids, though. For once, not with the quality of acting or feeling stilted in any kind of way. Longtime listeners of the podcast will know that I hate kid acting.
Yeah.
If anything, once again, it might be the best example out of all these films of realistic casting that you would find within Baker's style. My issue is just more in the enjoyability of the experience, that the film is sunk a little bit between the main characters all just annoying me at the same time. Kids, the mom, basically everyone besides Willem Dafoe. And I'm not going to overly knock the film for it, but again, a little bit of an explanation of my original thoughts on this film, and that they didn't really evolve too much. I really kind of hate a lot of characters in this.
Wow.
But still respect the good acting. It's just one of those things where it's enjoyment versus...
The characters themselves sucked. This is Skylar in Breaking Bad for me. I almost can't watch the show because of how just annoying Skylar is. But it's that's her part.
Yeah.
She's playing the part.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is all the kid acting very good. The problem was they're playing bratty, annoying kids.
Yeah.
And they were bratty, annoying kids to you.
I'm legitimately annoyed by this many 6-year-olds on screen at once, And that's where I think, on the other hand, it would be hard for me to deny the quality of the acting going on here. I think regardless of if I enjoy the characters or not, Willem Dafoe is probably the highest profile actor across all of these movies.
Yeah. Phenomenal in this film.
Yeah.
Just want to put that in too. Love Willem Dafoe in this movie.
Absolutely. He's just a perfect father figure in this. Every scene, he's just doing the best dad walk you've ever seen. He's got something to do, he's got a message to deliver, and he's wearing jeans.
And he's so annoyed with where his life is at and him having to deal with this motel.
Yep.
And yet at the same time, he puts little hints in there where
Mm-hmm.
he loves these people.
Yes.
And it's a very good balance he strikes.
Yep.
He crushes it in the movie, and I'll just say, let's just call it the soda scene. Let's just say that the scene that has to do with maybe just getting a soda.
Oh, sure.
I was like, this guy's killing it.
Yes.
I was like, this guy is
Absolutely.
so good at acting like a normal guy running a motel.
Yep.
And he has morals on him, but it's
He's
really
the
great.
father figure of all these kids,
Of the adults.
and that they need
of the adults.
Yeah, true.
And it's pretty cool. He does a very good job here.
Absolutely. Also, like, kind of weird seeing, it's not that many years, but like how relatively young he looked in this versus the increasingly gothic face that he has now.
Yeah.
But I guess that's, I don't know.
It could just be makeup. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
But
True.
no, and also like Brooklyn Prince is the name of the actress who plays the main girl, Mooney.
Yes.
And like phenomenal. Sure, she is annoying at sometimes
sure.
because she's supposed to be annoying. And it's like sometimes I don't think she's being a great actress, but at the same time she's so good at playing a brat kid, where it's like, wow, she's really. I mean, the movie relies so heavily on her. It's
Absolutely.
crazy. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I mean, just to, I don't know, kind of future-proof this review, when I've complained about, like, crying with kid acting, that's not a problem here.
No,
and you can see that it's only used when it really needs to. When Baker really needs it on the screen. So, as much as I truly despise the character, the mother played by Bria Vinate, I believe it's pronounced. I think it's probably the best acting in the whole damn film, though, especially how complex of a role she plays in the story. I'm not kidding. Not a single scene with her is redeeming, but if anything, it was a performance I'm glad I rewatched because, again, I could appreciate the purpose of this horrible, horrible character, what she served for the story, and the point of the story around this character, as much as, again, her single-handedly would probably prevent me watching this movie again.
Right. Yeah. Schuyler effect. We'll just call it the Schuyler effect.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something there that has to be said about the enjoyment of it, but at the same time, it really is amazing performance from her. Folks, in a lot of ways, I could see how some viewers could watch this and it would be easily a must-watch for them. And while I don't enjoy the movie on that level, I have a hard time not calling it Sean Baker's best. Every ounce of this film is just so lasered in and so tight that I have to respect the level of filmmaking pulled off here. For the score itself, it's a real hard decision of, how much I enjoyed the watching experience and, again, versus the experience of the art that it wants to give, that it wants to convey. And I think if I was to cover this on its own, I might side with how to recommend this based on that enjoyment, but after a week of watching the developing style of our director over the years, the score has to communicate that this is his best. We're going to go ahead and give The Florida Project 2017 an 82.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah. I respect this film
shit.
way too much to give it anything below it.
I'm flabbergasted at that.
And yeah, not to backtrack, and you're like, oh yeah, you're pretty consistent with everything.
I think this was the biggest shift you've had on a film.
Yeah, and again, because I think in a vacuum, that 65 was communicating that, like, I respected the film a lot, but I probably just wouldn't recommend it and wouldn't watch it. Where after watching the movies this week, it's just like, there's no way this stands below any other of his films.
Wow.
It's just too fine-tuned.
Damn, 82% is really good, Vin.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Folks, don't sleep on The Florida Project.
Yeah, you might not want to watch it again, but for a first-time watch, I think it's in that category. It's in that caliber of movie that's just like, wow, this has got a lot going on for it.
Okay, that's a huge score. I was thinking that you were going to land in 70s or something like that. I felt like you were going to bump it up a bit. I forgot it was on the site, honestly. And then I went to go put it on. I was like, oh my God, it's already on the site. And then I saw 65, and I was like, that's budging.
Yeah. That's why I really wanted to open up the review with it. It was just like, to be fair, that's a little harsh.
But man, 82%. Okay. Well, like I said, I really liked it. I don't think I'm coming out as hot as you, just because the overall what the movie is, maybe it can only get so hot on a film like this.
Sure.
But I don't know. I did really like it. Mm-hmm.
I would almost, I don't want to, because I've compared to some directors already, and Baker really is his own kind of beast when it comes to this. But I would kind of compare it to like a really good Woody Allen film or something like that.
I could see that. I could see that.
Where it's just like...
you don't want to hear my comparison.
Oh,
Not not this film particularly, but what I'm picking up on Sean Baker.
Okay.
And these films films as a whole.
Yep.
It's just like a little bit less if Napoleon Dynamite was more more drama, was more drama than comedy. That's kind
Tom,
of...
you don't know how right you are. Okay. Red Rocket. I make a Napoleon Dynamite. I'm not even a big fan of Napoleon Dynamite. You killed that.
Okay,
oh my
okay.
God.
Well, we'll end the film there. We'll end that there.
That's amazing.
82%, folks. Don't sleep on how good that is. If you're new to the podcast for the reason, you saw we're doing Sean Baker, so you're stopping by here. 82 might be easy for other sites to give out. It's tough to get in the 80s here at the daily ratings.
Absolutely.
65, good movie. 75 is a really good movie, a great movie. And we say like 85% is a must watch for like any audience.
Yeah.
So when you're in the 80s and 82% is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And maybe in that context, that's what kind of... I don't know. I mean, again, much like Anora has crazy scores, this as well, like almost perfect scores. I think maybe what separates that is a little bit of the mix of its subject matter, that it really might be, I don't know, not triggering, but it's heavy. Don't let the kid perspective fool you.
Right.
A lot is in an indirect spotlight, but it is still spotlit.
Yeah, big time. Okay, so with that, let's move on to... I didn't know he even made this movie.
Yeah.
This came out in 2021.
Yep.
So, like, kind of just post-COVID this came out. Wasn't even on my radar. Really didn't know until you brought it to my attention, honestly.
Yeah.
But this film is called Red Rocket. It's over 2 hours. Again, a full-on feature-length film for him. What seedy underground are we getting into here? What story develops? And get into it for us.
Yeah, well, we're definitely taking a look at porn again.
Okay.
So with this. If I haven't mentioned already, I actually forget if I mentioned it, but Red Rocket was definitely my personal favorite for the week. This was, again, kind of what made me come up with this sleeper hit type of trademark, where it's like you're watching this film and then out of nowhere you're like, wait, why is this so good? Why? It's something that surprises you or has a worth itness that pays off in a very significant way. It's not just like, oh, I'm glad I didn't waste my time watching this. There's something actually to seek out in these stories. I have plenty to say how characters reveal their true selves in this, but without a doubt, that reveal is why the experience of the film was so good. Because of that, certain simple aspects about the plot are potentially spoilers once again. So that's something to keep in mind if you truly wish to go in blind. Personally, maybe going in blind was possibly key to why I enjoyed this so much. This movie is trashy, charming, disturbing, and pathetic all at once. Like Baker's previous film, The Florida Project, how that twists together is why this is worth the watch, folks. The film shows piece of shit characters without highlighting their actions in a significant way, slowly twisting the knife as you come to realize that same realization that who you've been following is a piece of shit all along. And I'm telling you, that's what was working so well in this film. That bait and switch, that pull of the rug, and intentionally so. Red Rocket is without a doubt a dark comedy, but really could be debated which side of dark and comedic it leans heavier into. There's some drastic scenes in both directions. Simon Rex plays an eternal loser and golden retriever of a man, Mikey Saber, who, after more than a few stumbles in life, returns to his hometown in Texas. He's coming off a hard past and a hard road ahead because after spending the last 20 years as a male porn star, his big shot reputation sours nearly every relationship he tries to rekindle. But not once does it knock him down, as he's always striving forward to survive. If there's one thing he craves, it's getting back into the porn business, and the story centers on how he can't help but show his true colors in between where he is and where he wants to be. It's not saying a lot. I'm not even saying it's saying a lot, but this is without a doubt Simon Rex's best role I've seen him in.
Okay. Who was Simon Rex?
Right, exactly.
What else was he in?
Exactly. I've always seen this dude and I recognize him from like the 2000s scary movie movies.
Okay.
Even recently, he was in Blink Twice. You know,
That's the only thing on the site that he's been in.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed that he was in something better over the years. This is that. This is the better movie.
And enjoyable. Like, you liked his performance and all
Oh my God, his performance was so good. Again, and just how it drew a line of actually enjoyable to the point that you're almost rooting for the character,
right,
and how that slowly twists into something more sinister. The kind of undefeatable enthusiasm he brings to this character makes the whole movie. He plays a total idiot, but knows how to survive. He's in near poverty, but living his best life. He's got an addict's drive, but is just genuinely high on life. I mean, Mikey Saber is undefeatable. Like most of the standout roles this week, I would say this performance might be closer to the real person than like traditional acting, you know. I could see in a lot of these roles someone, respecting the acting, but maybe not saying like, oh, well, it's just kind of like them. It's just they are the character.
Right.
But regardless, he still kills it here. And I mean, really kills it. The character of Mikey achieves a balancing act that I was craving in Florida Project. Mainly him being enjoyable to watch, to the point that, again, you're almost rooting for him for half the time of the movie. Only for, once again, the turn of the knife as you realize he is the worst person in just the whole damn story. And that reveal is, it was the balance of like genuinely enjoyable, uplifting moments. You're rooting for this character, and like it just rips your heart out. It's just like, oh no. It's like, oh my God, no. That's really where I think it wasn't the best film this week, but was personally my favorite out of Baker's catalog, because that balance was just so extreme. Just how like the dark comedy of it is so extreme. Like there are like very just outly funny moments in the sense that it's just like, oh, this is just like he just wanted to do a straight comedy. Maybe he was like it was really rough during COVID or something like that, you know? The extremes of where it goes in the dark direction as well. It's really, really drastic. This had me wondering though, what separates this from other trailer trash comedies? Tom, you hit the nail on the head. What keeps this from being a Napoleon Dynamite where some characters just happen to smoke crack? I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Napoleon Dynamite, but I don't know if anyone's even implied smoking crack in that. The answer to that is the filmmaking on display, and really could be said for any setting Baker decides to tackle in his stories. I would say, unlike the relatively fixed position of the last three movies, there is a lot more of the struggling South that we see through Mikey's hustles, his day-to-day. I'll be honest, even the pacing itself, we see a lot of just like the day-to-day. There's a lot of just like atmosphere building in this film, but there's something significant to it, whether that is being a reflection of, kind of character motivations, character mentality, or just visual storytelling itself. These background shots, you can maybe see them as boring, but there is visual storytelling still going on without blurring a single word of dialogue or burdening your natural characters with something prescribed that probably would come out stilted, in the acting performance. Smokestack-filled horizons, his dealer having this just ridiculous outdoor outpost. It's unreal. It's just like, how are they not shut down by the cops? The fictional chain of Donut Time. Donut Time is in multiple movies and honestly is a cinematic universe for Sean Baker.
I didn't know this either.
Yeah, so he can't use Dunkin' Donuts or anything like that.
Right.
Has the same imaging, has all everything that marks a Dunkin' Donuts, but it's just called Donut Time, and it's in Tangerine. It's in this.
Is it in Florida Project?
Nah, maybe not. Maybe it's actually just Tangerine in this. Okay. But my vote is that it's for the Sean Baker CU, SBCU. But all of this stands out because Baker is able to make the everyday stand out. And among the many hats that he wears in these productions, it shows that his directing is still the most impactful. And again, it's visual storytelling. It's visual storytelling that is strategically useful when half of your characters aren't traditional actors. And if you were to throw them a line and say, like, oh, I don't know, talk about the economy of the area, I think it would probably maybe not sink the movie, but it would be a black eye on the film. So instead, he leans into these visual storytelling notes that you can see the impact of big oil around this area. You can see that, yeah, there's clearly an economy, but like there's struggle here. I just found that so interesting. Walking into this, I was expecting something like Boogie Nights, where it's all fun and games, and then the story tries to rip your heart out by the end. But like I said, somehow this is both funnier and darker at the same time, and really not easy to do. In execution, not easy to make like a good movie doing as well.
Right.
Like easily that could come off as like cartoony or just too extreme, but it's all because Mikey Saber, he's being this character that you love to see on screen, but being the ignition point of all the drama and all the conflict. My appreciation for this coming for how that conflict jumps off the screen and into your own watching experience, twisting the perception of our main character that you feel conflicted watching this performance. Folks, the whole film, this is really my elevator pitch with this. I probably should have led with this, but the whole film is a slow peel of a Band-Aid, that might not look the best underneath, but you still can't look away. We're going to go ahead and give Red Rocket a 78.
Okay, so 78, very high score. Yeah. Very high score and very weird analogy to sum up the movie.
You didn't like that?
No, it works. But it's 78% really good.
I actually thought that was, I really like that.
Because, no, it's good. It's good. I got no problem with it. What's shocking to me, though, is still these films are small films, really. They are small films, and we're getting a lot of mileage out of them.
Sure.
As far as like quality and how good they really are.
Absolutely.
78% is a very good score, Vince.
Yeah, and I think that oddly enough, with Red Rocket, this is the only one that I'm above, the critical consensus on the film. And I don't know if that was maybe we're seeing, online that's a skew of reviews post-COVID that I don't know if people, still don't like it or something like that. But there's something here that it worked for me.
It really works.
Yeah, in a way that the other films just did not.
I wonder if this was maybe just coming off of the Florida Project, which was so high regarded. You know what I mean? Maybe
the expectation.
The expectation, it didn't hit standards maybe they were looking for. Because the funny thing is, you almost, like you were saying, you enjoy this more, but the better movie is Florida Project.
Yes.
By a hair, by 4 points. But
sure. But yeah, there is something there that... yeah, I mean, I think it really boils down to this being more comedic, and Florida Project really sticking to its drama, sticking to like what it's trying to communicate, But again, I would say, though the scores don't translate that, I would almost recommend Red Rocket over Florida Project, just because, again, there was... the way he crafted it, the way the story unfolds, it makes me miss him working with Berguch. It makes me
the writer.
Yeah. I think a beef I have with Anora is that there is something missing to the formula, and I can only point to that talent taking a back seat or that talent stepping away from the project.
Right. Okay. All right. 78% for Red Rocket. Before we get on to the new movie in theaters, Anora, just want to take the time here to remind people that Vin and I are going off the value for value model, and that the daily ratings is completely producer supported. Basically, we're not going to have any advertising on the website or on the podcast. We're not going to have any paywalls on the site that you have to pay to access content. And we're not doing the tier structure thing like a Patreon where you need to give us a certain amount of money and get bonus content. All the content that Vin and I have, it's out there for everyone for free. But the idea of it is, are you enjoying it? Are you finding it valuable? Then can you send us value back? That's value for value. And it's through monetary support. So you go to thedailyratings.com and head to the donations tab. And like I said, through your monetary support, through your donations, you become an actual legitimate producer. of the daily ratings. It's just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you're a producer of the project, and that's kind of how we're doing it here. So when you produce, when you donate in, you can write in a producer note. This could be questions, comments, critiques. It could be suggestions. It can be ask us anything. It doesn't have to be movie related. But the idea is if you're producing the show, we want to hear what you have to say, and whatever it is. It's just another way to say thank you also. But it opens up communication with you. So when you send in a producer note, you can email us at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. Email us your note there, and we'll read it in this segment here, which is the producer segment.
And folks, like you've heard over the past couple of weeks, even if there's a delay, you want to put some, time into the note, or you just don't get around to sending it, we're more than happy to give you the time.
Yeah. Another idea behind the value for value is it can be whatever amount of value you have or feel like giving. We have some set donations if you want, but there's the value for value button there, because that's there for whatever amount you want to send in, big or small, whether it be $5, $50, or $500. It doesn't matter. Whatever you feel like you're getting from the show, or everybody's on their own finances. That's why we never have set donations that you need to send in to us. Are you liking it? Are you stopping by every week or once in a while using the website? Then can you send something our way? We greatly, greatly appreciate it. We love the producers that we've had so far, and we can't wait to kind of keep on growing this into something special, and this segment into something special as well, as more people send their producer notes in. But anyway, that's how we're doing it at the Daily Ratings. It's thedailyratings.com, and head to the donations tab, and always just go to thedailyratings.com.
Absolutely.
We're constantly updating. We got the movies on there. We got the compilations. We're going to do some additions later in the year as we close out 2024, and we have some fun things planned as well. So, always stop by this site. Anyways, so dailyratings.com, head to the donations tab, and we thank you all so much. All right, Vin, with that, let's jump to Anora. So this is his longest film.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's 219, and Red Rocket was 210. His longest film. I consider it to be his biggest film as far as just like cinematic experience.
Oh, sure,
You know what
sure.
I mean? Like it's the largest, kind of broadest film that he has done. And it's getting buzz. I mean, this is like Florida Project buzz, but even more.
Yeah.
I mean, Florida Project, by the way, it got one Oscar nom for Willem Dafoe, but it was like getting the talk earlier in the year.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be at the Oscars. It's a big whatever.
Yep.
This is really getting the buzz. And as we said, even its release schedule is weird because I feel like it's trying to game something. But it has a wide release. It's finally available to basically to a lot of theaters. It will be in a theater around you. We saw it together. Anora. Tell us about it, Vin.
Folks, one of the factors that made me want to dedicate a 5-spot to Sean Baker comes from the kind of his persona seen in interviews, specifically for Anora's PR circuit. I wasn't really familiar with him at all, and I kind of expected someone that juggled so many roles in the production to either be arrogant or, I don't know, kind of an antisocial, creative type. But, I mean, this guy writes, he edits, he directs all of the films this week. So now doing that single-handedly that Chris Burgoch left as co-writer, it just had me curious of, like, what is the mentality of this guy? But much like the down-to-earth stories he helms, I found his interviews to be very grounded and showing clearly that his passion for creating is driving the art itself, not the payoff. So, does this release schedule for Anora make our lives a little bit harder, and as far as covering movies on time for the podcast, maybe beating other reviewers? It's a little hard. But if this is part of his marketing, if that is part of the successful business model that he sees, then I am ultimately in support of it.
Yes.
Again, it just makes our lives a little harder.
Yes. I'm going to make a caveat to that as well.
Sure.
It's out of his hands at this point.
Oh, okay.
Let's be honest. It's up to the distributor, which I believe is Neon for this, by the way.
Yeah, that's also another thing. He really has bounced around to all of like the really big indie houses. So it's curious that he doesn't, just continue working with one and continue that relationship. On the note of the praise, though, I'm very happy Anora is getting universal praise online. The fact that this has a 91 on Metacritic and is allegedly the front runner for this year of Best Picture at the Oscars. I think it's great. But I think my own anticipation of this hurt this slightly because I was walking into this expecting a lot more. It's exactly why I try to stay away from other reviews because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. I don't want to be swayed in any kind of way.
Yeah. If you're plugged in at all, though, in the movie world,
it's
this,
tough.
This is being shoved down your throat almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though I don't think many people like are talking about it or walking around.
Sure.
Certainly didn't have a great weekend. That's for sure. In theaters. It's that, I don't want to say the pretentious movie community type thing, but it can be a little pretentious sometimes.
Sure,
you know?
Absolutely.
And it can be like, I don't know, a little, this is for us, not for you, the people.
Sure.
And I get that a little bit with this.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's, you know.
Listen, yeah, I mean... I see what you mean though because it's even how the marketing leans into what it get the Palme d'Or or whatever.
Yes.
The award accolades and whatnot. Sometimes that can be something that someone shuts their brain off to. Which, in actuality, I don't think this movie is like that though. You know what I mean? I think this movie is kind of really simple. Much more simple than what we've covered so far. Just something there that I want to note that I'm coming much more lukewarm than 91. I mean,
I think together this is just the realistic outlook on the film.
Yeah.
We're not up our own asses yet.
So true. Nora is a hypersexual story of young love with plenty of beats of dark comedy as the picture-perfect fairy tale romance is shattered by reality. In the story, we follow Anora, or Annie, she goes by, a street-smart dancer, and Ivan, or Vanya, a boyish, filthy, rich Russian. The two meet at a New York-based strip club called Headquarters. By the way, that's a 10 out of 10 name for a strip club if there ever was one.
Headquarters, HQ.
And they hit it off as she's the only one that is a Russian-speaking dancer in the whole joint. Lucky for Annie, she just bagged one of the richest dudes in the whole place. And quickly we see Vanya bankroll a dream lifestyle too good to be true. Like all happy endings in life, they get married in Vegas and expect nothing to go wrong. But this proceeds to open up the most Russian can of worms possible. Annie gets tied up with whatever shady connections Vanya's family has in a scrambling search for the man-child with riches beyond imagination. I would say once again, Baker's setting, it's one of the biggest highlights of the film, and mainly that kind of stripper culture we get to see on Annie's side of the coin. We get a lot of moments that are just kind of naturally funny, whether it's, the strippers kind of being bitchy to each other, or clapbacks, or things like that. And just how I mentioned in Tangerine, these moments, they're not like excessively funny. I'm not like bending over laughing, but they are also effortlessly funny because they're not really trying.
Because the characters themselves are funny characters.
Yeah.
And that's what we were saying earlier. I can appreciate that about how he writes his characters, or at least the story he wants to tell are around characters that will be naturally funny in real life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When Annie enters into this life of hyper luxury, it's a no-brainer how she would leave these days behind her, but I feel like it still creates a solid motivation for the character, especially when she is clawing and scratching for her chance to hold on to it later on in the story, because we see these moments in the strip club. We see the moments in Headquarters and the type of personality she has to deal with. Like I'll say, though, my quick rundown review of this, the elevator pitch review of this, is that I wish any one of these sections that kind of unfold in the story oddly were more the focus. It feels like, that's why I was kind of surprised with you saying this is his longest, because it really does feel like it. It's almost like...
It doesn't feel like it, or it does?
It does.
Yes, it does. Yeah. No, for sure.
There's something there that's like either one of the sections need to be longer, or I don't know, all of them kind of need to be trimmed down in some way. There's a weird balance issue of where this goes from happy fun times to kind of dark comedy scramble to the drama at the very end.
So
it
is oddly broken up into set section. I mean, I have it. I have the first third is softcore porn, the second third is comedy, and then the third is rom-dram.
Yeah.
And it's so succinct. Where can you blend that a little bit better?
Sure.
Or just or like you said, shorten it up a little bit because by the end, when you're in the rom-dram of it, it's almost like checking your watch a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Because almost like the fun is over, and now we get the afters. You know, we get the leftovers.
We got to deal with the harsh realities.
Right, you only have us on the string for so long, Sean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Shawnee. And again, I mean, I'll say it probably again in a little bit, but there's something there that I felt like, I'm not saying this guy can't do it all on his own, and he was writing side by side with Chris Burgoch for all the other ones that we've covered this week. But I feel like in that chemistry, in the balance of how these projects are pulled off, there was something missing there, and I can only assume it's because we're losing that one half of the writing
Right,
team.
so maybe he's just a little bit long on the pen, a little bit too much. Yeah,
exactly. So, the reveal of what is heartbreaking in this story is very different, though. And personally, I thought it was a bit less effective than most of our other films this week. I think the key is understanding Annie as our main character. It's obviously called Anora, but it really, I would say for your watch of this, folks, it's how she feels turning away from the life on the pole. This fairy tale romance might come off as, like you said, Thomas, softcore porno in the first half of the film, but as her character is swept up from seeing things how they are, it's around how she sees her own self-value, and I feel like that's important to note because it's something that it's ultimately where the film goes with its purpose, where it's purpose of the story, and it's something that, reflecting on the film, I feel like that's where the depth was for it. And maybe it's oversimplifying it, saying it's like, well, it's called Anora, main character's Anora. Obviously, it's got to be about her, but I feel like it's such a whirlwind of like, what do I expect from these type of movies from Baker, that I think while watching again, I was just like, I didn't know
enough.
Yeah, I even wanted more with the Russian stuff. Like, what's the drama of the family? What's the details of that? We don't really get many details with that,
right?
So that's either got to be intentional or just not the focus. And again, it was me focusing on like, okay, what was the purpose of the story? And I think it's just very strictly about Annie,
Yeah. And like you said, I guess not super shocking, but for a 2 hour and 20-minute film, and for what we got going on,
I expected like a Russian mob, like almost Goodfellas.
Like it makes sense stepping away from it, wanting more.
Yeah,
for sure. I think it's held up so. Once again, I mean, talk about performances. I mean, this rests on Mickey Madison or Mikey Madison, the actress that plays Annie, really phenomenal. But I just think that the platform, you can only get so much. I think I might be a little bit hot. I wasn't disappointed at all in the film.
Okay,
because I don't think I walked into it as hot as you. Because
sure.
I already had my Sean Baker love was, I feel like, at a reasonable place.
Sure.
Walking into it. So I just feel like I got what I expected it to be, and I felt a lot of the way that I did with the Florida Project, where I walked away saying, very good executed film, a little long, but again, I don't know when I'm going to be in an Anora mood again.
So true.
Now, we're traveling a little bit more. This is a louder film. It's a more exciting film than Florida Project, so I could see myself watching this before I do with the Florida Project. However, because that was a tighter, almost perfectly... Everything about that film just worked. Like we said, it's hard to say anything bad about it.
Yep.
This, there are negatives to it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Even though overall the scope and scale of the film is bigger.
Absolutely.
Because so much is on Annie, is on Mikey Madison and her acting on this, it's just tough for a longer film.
I totally agree. And it's in that maybe the sprawling side of the story that I feel like, again, something was kind of missing from the writing compared to all that we covered this week. This feels like a departure from the usual kind of impoverished realism. We get some of that in the stripper culture, but we're thrusting, the audience and characters are thrusted into a dream life of excess.
Great point. It is a polar opposite that we're used to with him.
It's missing a little bit of that chemistry of it. And listen, in just the way I made the joke that this dude made 5 of the same movie.
Right.
Believe me, I want him to do something different. I don't want to be like a Wes Anderson where it's just like, oh, okay, another one of these,
Well, it's like, what industry are we in next time? Next film,
There's something there that I think is, it still aims for that same type of, I don't know, not social dialogue, but the setting work that he's doing. And I feel like it is a bit of a mishit just because visually what you're seeing is absolute excess,
Yeah.
We're not really thinking about the risk of Annie going back to a life as a stripper at any point in this, because she doesn't think she doesn't think that's going to happen, and the characters around her that don't think that's going to happen. So I think just regardless of the story reason for doing this, I just felt something was lost by not having stronger dramatic beats around Annie's life that she's leaving behind. So it takes a full hour to switch from wish come true kind of romance to something with more familiar dark comedic drama spin, and for that reason, I was kind of watching the clock with this. You definitely read my mind with. I think you probably saw me watching the clock. It's a little because I didn't know where the story would end up, which is a good thing. I was definitely hooked on finding out more about Vanya's family and the reaction to the news of their marriage, but it's also because there's a huge dip in pacing as soon as shit hits the fan. Especially compared to the first half, events go from a week flying by in an instant, when it's all lovey-dovey and money being thrown anywhere and Vegas, to then the pacing of the story being a minute-by-minute breakdown of a single night. I feel like there's something off balance there that just in the experience of the film just felt like just poor pacing.
Right. It's a good point. Yeah.
The more I reflected on the film, this felt even more lopsided, to my memory of it. It just felt like there was so much there. It was just like, oh, we were going at, such a high tempo, such an exciting film. And then I didn't really hate the dark comedy beats. There is a scramble searching for Vanya that Annie is paired with the goons of this Russian family. That was a fine section, but it's just such a sheer face cliff that you go from the high tempo electronic beats that are playing in the first half of the film. Folks, I'm not really sure what I wanted from this, but I know I just didn't quite get it. I thought that this was a pretty good movie. The trademark heartbreak that makes Baker's films worth watching is still present, but it's just not as strong and certainly not as fine-tuned in its execution as the last two films we just talked about, which I think are just standout examples of why he's a director we should pay attention to. I think I would have preferred a bit more time in just one of these sections, like I said. Take your pick, the romance, the dark comedy, the drama, with each of these sections just feeling ever so slightly too long on their own. But don't let my own expectations keep you away from the film. This had an ending that made me reflect on the film quite a bit, and reflecting on what it was really saying all along, because the ending is that type of heartbreaking charm that you have in his other films, but it does kind of come out of nowhere. It is unexpected, and I feel like the film was thought-provoking in the sense of, all right, what was this trying to really say all along, if this is how it goes out? And I think for that reason as well worth checking out to support one hell of a consistent director. We're going to go ahead and give Anora a 68.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 68. And I feel like if this was like 15 minutes shorter, I just think it would have shot up.
Sure.
Because I think a lot would have been helped by trimming this down a bit. And like you said, almost in how it's so broken up in thirds, if you shaved off minutes of each third, kind of would have went a long way.
Absolutely. Actually. Or rebalancing them, something in the chemistry of it.
Yeah, because it would have made each individual part even more electric.
Yeah.
Where we're really fleshed out here.
Absolutely.
Maybe a bit too much, as we've been hitting over the head. So look, we saw this movie together.
Yeah.
It was a pretty easy score for me, but this gets a 2 shoes, no laces.
Okay. I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, because I almost want to give it a lace. But what I was thinking about it more and more, there's parts of this film that was totally 2 shoes, 1 lace, and there was parts of this movies that were really lower 2 shoes. Overall, so for podcast listeners, this is 2 shoes and a shine.
Oh!
On the website, this will be just a straight 2 shoes, no lace, though. Because it's upper echelon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which, honestly, is your 68. That is your 68.
Absolutely. There's something there that still works about it,
Yes. Yeah. It's just, you're trying, it's just too long. It's just too much.
Yeah.
But not, I don't want to shy away people from seeing it because it is a bit of an experience. It was, like, I'm glad I went to because you had texted me day of, said you want to go see it. I'm glad I came to the theater and watched it. My returnability to the film, as I said,
same kind of aspect.
Yeah, it's a 2 shoot, no lace type movie. with that, just a couple questions here because
Sure.
this guy is such an beloved inside the industry a little bit.
Kind of a golden boy.
And
I mean, he's obviously a grown man.
Yeah,
but...
and I feel the need to push back. You know me. I mean, it's just
Oh,
anyway.
you're gonna take out?
No, it's just I just always feel the need to push back a little bit, or maybe because I just enjoy that.
Yeah, the contrarian.
I almost want to say, like, if you had to pick one thing that Sean Baker does the best, what would it be? And I kind of framed it in my head earlier in the week. I was thinking, like, if you're at a donut shop and it was donut time, and you saw Sean Baker, and you went up to him and you had to thank him for only one thing, what would it be?
I think it's settings. I think it's just
wow. Okay, yeah.
It's just again, it's in. You don't think there would be visual storytelling in the mundane, but he makes it. And that's where it's like it's in the execution of him in the director's chair. Again, going back to the very beginning of the episode, I look at anything beyond writer or director, I go, oh boy, is it a little bit too big for the britches? Is that going to hurt, this film at all? I feel like the takeaway for this week is that despite all that he juggles, director really is first because it's the visual storytelling that he's pulling off.
So I like that a lot, especially with how I mean his films are shot well. His scenes look good. I had that comment even for the Florida Project where he is pulling Wes Anderson type. The way he's using color on film works really well. Where Wes is like the master of that, of color on film.
Yeah.
He was really great in the Florida Project and just kind of making it its own character, as you said before. If I had to thank him for one thing, if there's one thing I'm coming along, I think a lot of people run up to him and be like, we have these societal castaways that we throw aside and look down upon, and you shed such a positive light on these individuals
right.
like that. No, to me, and I don't even see him as a visionary directing masterpiece, like a visionary director. I see him as an unbelievable casting director.
Yeah,
and I think the way he pulls actors that we barely know or have never seen before. And
never seen since.
Right, and what he's able to pull from them is super incredible.
Yeah.
And that is partly with him writing and his writing team of the other guy. But he finds these people. All of these movies could be shit because it's so every single film is relying heavily on the shoulders of these individuals.
Yeah.
And actors not well known.
Unvetted actors. Yeah, exactly. They could each one of them could have potentially been a black eye on it, but somehow all these untraditional castings, they all work.
And that's what I'm most impressed about. From the two movies I've seen and what you've said about all of these, and with the acting and the characters is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that's where I think, like, wow, that's where I'm really impressed by this guy. And his ability to mix in comedy and to keep you engaged at least.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to the slight criticism there of like, he's giving a spotlight to those that would not have spotlights. I mean, you even, listen to all these reviews. I'm not really on that level either. I think these films kind of earn the spotlight because of the story being told. It's not necessarily that it's their time to shine or it's their time to get that spotlight. I think the films themselves earn that ability because they are stories worth being told, There's something to even like, the lowest of the week with Starlet. There's still something there that just works beyond like what it's about. It works on like a cute level. And, that's where I come back to like he has like heartwarming is a primary mood that he's able to conjure in a lot of these.
Big time. So, no, I think that's great. And the only thing is, from the very start of the podcast, you saying, he's juggling a lot of balls with all of his films. And that could go, we made fun of it in Mamma Mia 3. Where it's just
that's
like,
a great
what I mean?
callback.
Where it could be too much. But this whole time, and I couldn't remember the guy's name, I went to our site. Because this guy made 2 films.
Okay.
I think maybe a third one. You like both of them, but this is a guy who's in every element when it comes to directing, writing. Same deal with editing, cinematography. Shane Carruth. He does Upstream Color.
Oh.
And then he does another one that I can't remember.
Yes.
But that's a guy who, again...
Upstream Color and...
Primer. Oh, yes,
Primer. Yeah. Oh, man. I really love those movies.
Right. Those are guys so intimately involved.
Yes.
No one's messing with their project. It's their project. Their hands are in every single part.
Yep.
You love Shane Carruth, and I think Sean Baker kind of has that.
Yes,
where you can trust him. again, it gets sketchy when you see a guy so involved, but this guy seems like it's a proven track record where you can kind of trust his work at this point.
Absolutely. Great call outs. I would love to return to those movies because, especially Obscene Color, that was such an impact.
Yeah, 85 on the site.
Yeah. Really great.
But, okay, Vin, thank you so much. This was a great director study.
Yeah.
Hopefully we all got to know Sean Baker a little bit more, or a little bit better. I know I did. I'm so glad that I watched The Florida Project and Anora. Great app. Any lasting notes here? Or what do we got coming on next?
For you, Red Rocket, worth a checkout. It really is.
His only film with male-centric as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let me just talk a little bit about next week.
Big week.
We go from a director 5-spot that is not an arrogant director, and guess what? We're going to a very arrogant director, Ridley Scott. We've covered quite a bit of Ridley Scott, both for his new releases and like early in the podcast. Yeah, we did the Alien sequels. We did The Last Duelist early on.
Early. Yeah, very early.
There's just a lot that we've covered in Scott's career. So choosing a 5-spot was interesting. Originally, I was going to try to focus it around like the pseudo-historical type of fiction that he does. I'm just going to go with what I want to watch, what I want to knock off the list.
Yeah, what do we got? People pay attention. It's a big week. It's a big week.
One to watch along with, I think. We're going to do Legend, his next film after Blade Runner from 1985 that has, I guess, Tim Curry as a devil and a very early Tom Cruise.
Very early.
Yep, I believe Tom Cruise still has the mono tooth. He didn't get that fixed yet. Thelma and Louise from 91. Just never seen it. It's on like so many top 10s of his stuff. So really want to touch on that. American Gangster. Originally, this was not going to be in the cut, but I want to watch American Gangster. I love that movie. So
it's a big-time movie.
Yeah.
Big-time movie.
And hearing a little bit of the buzz with Gladiator 2, apparently Denzel's pretty good in it. So I think that was a good addition. And, of course, Gladiator 1 and 2. 1, I'm excited to revisit.
It's been a long time.
2, who knows? Ridley Scott has been such a I don't know, a son of a bitch.
He has been a son of a bitch.
He's been so arrogant with his interviews. I mean,
well, and not my only thing. Okay, we were like not happy. We were not excited at all for Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
The more information coming out about it, the more my ears are pricking up.
Sure.
Got to be careful with that though. Okay, walk into a Napoleon situation last year.
Oh, so true.
And nothing but let down.
Yeah.
I mean, I really just can't. I'm so sad that film came out with him attached to it so heavily. But
yeah, the film came out at all. Like,
so I'm in a thing where just like I want to be excited because it's Gladiator freaking 2.
Yeah. But
at the same time, and I am getting excited, but I really need to temp it down. But we'll see. It's a big. I mean, Gladiator, American Gang. These are all big movies.
Oh yeah,
these are huge movies. This is gonna be a long episode next week, but all good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to return to Gladiator. It's been years, and I'm really excited to turn to what I think is one of the best years in movies, which is 2007 with American Gangster.
Absolutely.
So, Vin, we got our work cut out for us next week, folks. We hope you tune in. It's always a blast, and thank you tuning in for this week, and Vin for getting these scores up for us. So we'll run it down one more time. We have Starlet with a 53%. Tangerine with a 66, The Florida Project with a big 82, Red Rocket with a 78, and Anora with a 68 and a 2 shoes. Folks, as always, thank you so much. It's always a great time. We'll see you next week for another big director study right here on the Daily Ratings Podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast.